Hello, everyone. I am Shraddha Nigavekar from Pune, India. And I'm a storyteller for almost 3 years now. And I've told to live audiences as well as over Zoom, even on Google Meets. I am a YouTuber and a podcaster. I have a channel for stories called Katha by Shraddha, short form KBSSS. So be sure to check that out later when you get a chance. And I have a podcast which I host in the regional language of Marathi. Today, I'm bringing you a personal experience story. I'm telling this story for the first time to an audience, and I hope you like it. As storytellers, we often become observers. I hope you agree with me. When we go out during our daily lives and we see these interesting characters around us, we notice little nuances, the way they use their hand gestures, or their eyes, or body movements, or what they're wearing, or pieces of jewelry, any little thing that's unique to them. And we kind of absorb that and we hang on to that to use in our tellings. Well, I was really, really lucky last December when I met a character that was a smorgasbord of many such characteristics and nuances. It was almost as if this really loud character had stepped off of a storybook and come into real life, just for me, the teller. But let me start the story at the beginning. It all started with our family deciding to go for a vacation over Christmas holidays to Thailand. And we live in Pune, and usually in order to go to Thailand, we have to take a car ride, which is about 3 hours long, to Bombay, and then fly to Bangkok and then go wherever we want in Thailand. But last December, this one airline called SpiceJet had started a direct flight from Pune to Bangkok. And it was great because we could save all that time traveling. So immediately after these flights were announced, we went ahead and booked 3 tickets from Pune to Bangkok. And December 27th found us at Pune airport, my husband, my teenage son, and myself at the airport checking in for our flight, SpiceJet flight from Pune to Bangkok. And that's where this story, titled The SpiceMax Man, really begins. We checked in and we got to our gate and we were waiting, to board our flight, when SpiceJet announced that due to a technical difficulty, we are extremely sorry to inform you that your flight has been delayed. So we were waiting at the gate, and we waited, and we waited, when suddenly, from somewhere behind us, there came this booming voice that was reverberating through the entire lounge. When you're sitting in a crowded space and you're talking to each other, usually you try to be soft, so as not to disturb other people around you. But not this voice. This voice was really booming over all the rows in that seating lounge. And this voice was narrating a story. So of course, I turned, craned my neck around, trying to see where this voice was emanating from. And it was coming from this really large gentleman sitting behind us with his back to us, 3 rows down, and he was holding court over the passengers sitting next to him, telling this really great adventure that he had when he had gone horse riding. And he was explaining to them with animated gestures, and his head was bobbing up and down, and his shoulders were moving, and it was all an action-packed story about how his particular horse, of all the horses in that group of horses, had decided to break rank and veered off of course, and how he very bravely had steered that steed back on track and gotten in with the group again. It's told very excitedly, and not just to the people sitting around him, but the entire lounge could hear that story because it was being told in a really loud voice. And to match the voice, this gentleman was wearing a red sweater with a very loud red, green, and blue squared pattern on it. not a man you would easily forget. But our wait was very entertaining because of him. And soon SpiceJet announced, it's time to board your flight. And we got out onto the ramp and up. We had to actually walk to the aircraft and walk up. It was not through one of those tunnels, but walk up a flight of steps into the aircraft. And soon we were seated, and our seats were in row 6, A, B, and C. And just as I was fastening my seatbelt on, the voice boomed again from row 3. I'm not moving. And there was a passenger standing in the aisle, and our red sweater gentleman was sitting in the seat 3D. And the passenger in the aisle was asking him to move. And the red sweater gentleman, I'm going to be seated here. And the passenger in the aisle said, but I have a boarding pass for 3D. That's my seat. And just then the flight attendant, of course, arrived to, because this was slowly but steadily escalating into a situation they did not want it to escalate into. And the flight attendant got there and said, may I help you, sir? And our red sweater gentleman said, yes, I have bought a SpiceMax seat. And my seat is 4D, but I'm going to be seated here because there is no row 4. No row 4? And I quickly looked up and he was right. Row 1, row 2, row 3, and row 5. There was no row 4 missing. Huh? And then the flight attendant said, but sir, this gentleman has 3D as a seat and 5 is empty. Would you mind sitting in 5D, please? It's just one seat behind. Would that not be okay? No, I will not move because I have bought SpiceMax seats. And only the first 4 rows in any aircraft of SpiceJet have SpiceMax seats. Now, let me stop this conversation here for just a second to explain what SpiceMax is. SpiceMax is a program, is a little bit of an upgrade that you can buy ahead of time with your ticket, which gives you a few benefits like, a shorter queues, priority, check-in times, your baggage comes out earlier, and you get more space between seats. You get more leg room. And he was a large man. He was tall and large. And I could understand why he was insisting on the more leg room. It's just more comfort, on your flight. But he was adamant that he was not going to move because he wanted his SpiceMax seat. And the flight attendant didn't know where to turn. And my husband and my teenage son and I were just looking at each other, trying to, listen into the conversation at the same time, not be very intrusive. And it was just a high tension thing because people were backing up, trying to get in. And this passenger was standing in the aisle waiting to be seated. And then my son said, he's got to be their brand. He's got to be the SpiceMax Man. And I just stifled a giggle and I shushed him because his whisper, he thought he was whispering, but teens, how teenagers can be. They think they're whispering, but I bet 3 other rows heard what he said, SpiceMax Man. But anyway, finally, the attendant requested the person standing in the aisle, sir, would you please sit in 5? And this gentleman can be seated in 3D, would you mind? And this other gentleman was so flustered and frustrated by that, he said, that's fine, I'll sit in 5D, I don't care. And he went and sat in 5D. And we thought that that was the end of it. And the other passengers streamed in and they all got seated and the door was closed. And we thought that was the end of that. And we were all getting ready to finally take off because this flight was delayed anyway. And the flight attendant had explained in the middle that the delay was a technical issue with the previous aircraft. So they had changed the aircraft, but not changed the boarding passes, which is why that row 4 was missing. And then suddenly, just as we were ready to take off, getting ready and okay, the flight attendants were walking up and down, closing all the overhead cabinets and all. Just then, SpiceMax Man boomed again. Excuse me, miss. The flight attendant rushed to his side. Yes, sir. Can I help you? I don't think this is a SpiceMax seat. But sir, and she was desperate by now, but sir, you said it yourself, the first 4 rows are SpiceMax seats. My knees are, hitting against 2D. I don't think this is a SpiceMax seat. Get me a tape measure. A tape measure, sir? I don't think we have a tape measure on board. No, you get me a tape measure. I will measure the seat behind me and my seat, and I will show you there are no extra 4 inches in the space. SpiceMax seats, 4 extra inches. You don't have a tape measure, you say? Sir, we don't usually carry a tape measure on board, and the doors are closed now. Would you like to try the emergency row seating and see if that would work for you? Okay. I'll go check it out, but I'm not committing to those yet. And so just as everything was being prepared for takeoff, SpiceMax Man trudges behind to the emergency seating, the row. And that was all the way back, right? Row 15 or 16 or something like that. And almost the entire aircraft was waiting with bated breath to see if the emergency row seating would make the cut. But alas, it didn't. He didn't like them. And so he trudged all the way back up to 3D and plonked down in 3D. And we took off and landed without further drama. We had a good vacation in Bangkok and Pattaya, a lot of sand and sun and waves, a lot of coconut water, and a lot of, drinks. And then on the way back on Jan 3rd, back we were at Bangkok Suvarnabhumi International Airport, checking in for our Bangkok to Pune flight. And we were standing in line when my teen son goes, nudge, 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 nudge. Aye, look. SpiceMax Man. Where? And there he was, right up there at the priority check-in area on our flight again. Can you believe it? It's like he was following us just for our own entertainment. But I think Bangkok had tired him out. And that flight back from Bangkok to Pune, he was pretty quiet. No booming voice, no asking for change of seats, no measuring tapes, no demands. But SpiceMax Man surely left a beautiful, memorable, entertaining memory in our hearts and minds forever. And I'm sure this is going to become a family story that's going to be told over and over again downstream. And just to have a prop to tell that story, I actually saved my boarding pass from that trip. And that was the story of the SpiceMax Man. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So be sure to carry a measuring tape, people. It doesn't weigh much. You can wind it up. It slips in quite easily, and you can take it and carry on luggage. So you can be helpful to the next SpiceMax Man that you may run into.
Some years ago, somebody, someplace in the world, said my sandwich is only 11 inches. It's not 12 inches. Subway says we have a 12-incher.
12-incher, yeah.
And this fellow measured it, and it only came out to 11. Yep. And it became a global case because Subway did not handle it well in terms of public relations. They replied that 12 footage is just a marketing term. It is not a measurement description. It is just a copyrighted marketing term.
Marketing term.
So that didn't go over well.
That didn't go down well at all.
So this SpiceMax Man really has taken on a kind of a mythic aura for you and your family.
Yeah, I tell you, Eric, he was so, I keep thinking of Bollywood actors, and if this was a character in a movie, I think Boman Irani would be so perfect to play this role. I mean, he was just out of this world. It just felt like he stepped out of a story and into our lives. I couldn't believe a person like that actually. He was just he was a very alive personality, and a very dominant, live, and he knew what he wanted and he would not move from that.
But a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, it did. I suppose so, but at least he didn't, he didn't open the door and exit the flight.
Yeah, he could have gone ballistic when there was no row 4, when there was no measuring tape. But fortunately, it wasn't like that. Okay, Barry, then Despina.
Well, I think, Despina, you go ahead. You had your hand up first.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask the teller, if you had some measuring tape with you, would you give it to him at that point?
No, I would not have, Despina. I don't think so, because it would have increased, and we would have been delayed even further.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to see if it would be the selfish idea of having more fun that would prevail.
No, I think the entire aircraft was waiting for him to just settle down and for us to take off. And that was it. Yeah.
And Shraddha, I want to say I really appreciated the enthusiasm with which you told the story. It just felt like you had just gotten off the plane and you were telling us about what happened. And there's a lovely spontaneity to it, and your brightness. And I would say I tend to have a measuring device with me everywhere I go.
Really?
And it's my hand span. I know what my hand span is, and so I'm constantly measuring things. But of course, nowadays our phones have measurement devices where you can aim your phone at something and then move it, and it will tell you. Yeah,
it will tell you the distance. Yes.
So write to the SpiceMax Man and let him know that he has things at his disposal if it happens again.
It happens again. So it was interesting because I came back home and I actually looked up SpiceMax seats, and yes, indeed, they do have extra 4 inches in that space. And it's not a paltry sum that this gentleman had paid. It was somewhere like 2,500 rupees. So, it was a sizable amount that he had paid for that upgrade. It wasn't like 100 rupees or 500 rupees. So I can a bit understand his frustration that first of all, there was no row 4. I think it all started with that. When you board a flight and you have a seat that's on your boarding pass and the row is missing because they changed the aircraft on you because of a technical difficulty. So, go SpiceJet. But
Les?
I loved your story. I thought you did a couple of things that I liked especially. One, how do you take a small anecdote and turn it into an epic story? And you made an epic out of it. And I love that. And I love that you also turned it into a sort of a signature story that, nobody else in the world will tell that story. And if they do, they'll never tell it the way you tell it. And it's just so yours. I just like that. And a little side note, many of the American airlines now have different categories of economy class and all. But I like SpiceMax as the name. And you just can't buy a seat on an airline anymore. You have to be just so specific. And even then you don't get half the time you're not going to get what you're asked for.
What you're asking for.
Thank you. I loved it. I loved your telling of it.
Thank you, Les.
I was really thrilled that you gave credit to your teenage son for giving the story the name SpiceMax Man, because that, to me, elevated it to epic level. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Thank you so much for all that feedback. This is the first time I have told that story to an audience, and I'm happy to see that it went down so well. Thank you.
Yes, like Barry said, your acting was very present and very real. You brought it to life so well.
Thank you.
May
Eric.
I?
Shilpa, yes.
Shraddha, you literally brought SpiceMax Man into our living rooms. I could actually visualize everything, He getting up and then going to the emergency seat and checking out. Lovely. And then meeting him again while coming back was the climax.
That was crazy.
That
I'm
was
telling
like,
you. That was crazy because it was really like out of the blue that he would, you would have the same dates flying in and out of Thailand. But yeah, thank you, Shilpa.
Okay, thank you, Shraddha. And we'll stop the recording.